Right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So welcome to PenDaPaT Discourse Series first PenDaPaT Discourse Series in 2022. Before we start the session, I'd like to inform that this session will be recorded. So to ensure the session a smooth one, I would like to remind everyone to off your mic to avoid any interruption. So for better experience, you are encouraged to off your video as well. Sorry, yeah, to off your video as well. So however, we will have a photo sessions towards the end of the session. So please do on your video for the photo session. Good morning, everyone. So my name is Jimmy and I'm from Harvard University and also a PenDaPaT member. And I am the MC for today's event. It is good to see all of you today. So welcome to PenDaPaT Discourse Series. I can see some familiar participants and thank you for your continuous support. And for those who joined us the first time, so welcome once again. So allow me to do a brief introduction about PenDaPaT. So the name of our organization is the Malaysian Society for Higher Education Policy and Research Development, in short, PenDaPaT. We are a professional and non-government organization determined to provide informed feedback and suggestion towards issues regarding the national higher education policies and also practices. So last year, despite the pandemic, we have organized the Discourse series to address national higher education issues and how can we actually respond to the policy and practices. So continuing the effort, today we will have our first PenDaPaT Discourse series in year 2022 entitled Student Wellbeing, Are We Doing It Right? So this discourse session focuses on the management of students' well-being, particularly during the pandemic. So this 360-degree review of topics shall provide opportunities for students to highlight their well-being experiences during the pandemic and institutional actions and strategies from leaders. So finally, an expert panel will provide the feedback on the effectiveness of the actions and suggestions for betterment. So to begin the event today, so let's welcome Mr. Guy Perry, the Regional Director of iGraduate Asia, to do opening remarks. Mr. Guy is passionate about improving the student experience. He is the Regional Director for SE Asia for iGraduate, part of a tribal group, an independent benchmarking consultancy delivering comparative insights for the education sector and assisting institutions in ensuring their students are achieving their objective in employment and citizenship. So Mr. Guy is responsible for spearheading their ASEAN operation. He has worked in education for over 25 years in a variety of roles, from teacher to administrator, market researcher to consultant. He previously worked at the British Council for 12 years in a variety of roles and has presented at many international conferences, including Going Global, QS Apple, and the Commonwealth of Education Minister. So over to you, Mr. Guy.
Thanks so much, Jimmy. I hope everybody can hear me. I'm now going to share my screen. Let me just, hopefully you'll be able to see the slides. I'm assuming everybody can see the slides.
Yes.
Great, thank you so much. Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to deliver a few very brief, I promise, opening remarks. Thank you to the organisers, PenDaPaT. I've been involved with PenDaPaT for the last couple of years, and it's a fantastic organisation. And the topics that they always cover are the kind of hot topics of discussion around the world. So clearly, student well-being, student happiness is a really hot topic at present. And I hope to, share some of the information that we gather globally, just to sort of frame the debate that you're going to have later. Thanks to all the team at PenDaPaT, Prof Rosalini, Jimmy, Prof Norzaini, and all the rest of the team at PenDaPaT for putting together this fantastic event, which I know is going to cover a lot of ground over the next few hours. So let me just briefly introduce what we do, and also some data that I hope will, as I said, frame the debate. So what we do is basically survey. We survey the students. We survey students around the world. We're the largest survey organization of its kind globally, and we have an enormous data bank of resources for students. We've got about 4 million students who've responded since we began in 2006. Today, I'm just going to look at some data that is gathered last year from October to November 2021. And as you can see from the numbers, over 92,000 international students, over 75 domestic students, and we've got 107 universities in 15 countries. And within Malaysia, we had over 25,000 students responding. So, you know, it's a very rigorous database in terms of both comparisons and benchmarking for institutions. All the data we report individually back to institutions. So I've been spending the last few months reporting back to and IMU, institutions in Hong Kong, in Singapore, and in Thailand, etc. But obviously today's focus is student happiness. And I thought I'd just pick out some of the questions that we ask, which are related, I hope, to today's topic. Obviously, we have about 100 questions, all about satisfaction with learning, satisfaction with things like sports facilities, etc. But I thought I'd just pick out some data that is related to your topic. And we ask questions on happiness. We ask overall, how happy are you with your life at your institution at this stage in the year? We also ask about concerns about completing studies. Do you have any concerns about completing your studies? And we've seen some increases in concerns in that particular area. We also ask questions about levels of stress and anxiety. So do you feel particularly stressed or anxious about your life at, and obviously there's the name of the institution. And also, and of course this is relevant to later discussions, we also ask about satisfaction with counselling services. So we ask students, do they use the counselling services? Then those that do use, we ask them, how satisfied are you with the counselling services? And finally, also we ask questions about student engagement. And I think that's one of my concerns at the moment, is that although students are accessing, curriculum, etc., do they really still feel part of a student community committed to learning? And so we have a number of questions related to student engagement. What we've seen over the last year, and the pink is the Asia benchmark, and the green is the global. What we've seen is a decline in satisfaction, inevitably, due to the situation. We've seen a decline of about 6 to 7% on average across all the different areas we cover, from satisfaction to recommendation to value for money, which is a big issue when students haven't had access to campuses. Learning, living, support, and also, as you can see there, a decline in happiness by about between 8% in Asia, 6% globally. And what we've seen also, on the other hand, is a rise in those students who are concerned with completing their studies, and you can see an increase there of around 6 to 8%, and also a rise in stress. Although I have to say that within Asia, there seems to be less of a change since last year than globally. So that's the kind of top line data. And I basically just want to summarize, finally, some of the things that I found out presenting back to the 7 or 8 institutions in Malaysia who currently run the process. 20% of students in Malaysia are very concerned about completing their studies due to COVID, while 36% are concerned. So those figures are quite high. So you can see the concerns about completing the studies are due to financial issues, they're due to stress, they're due to will my funding body still continue funding me if I'm online? All sorts of concerns are whirring around students' heads, and concerns about completing studies. In terms of counselling, as I've already indicated, we've seen an increase by 35% in the usage of counselling. And that has put enormous stresses and strains on the counsellors, who have to obviously handle an increase in usage, an increase in those students who need assistance. But the counselling services in general have done a fantastic job. And as you can see, within Malaysia, 95% of students are either satisfied or very satisfied with the counselling services. So that compares to 89% globally. So, congratulate yourselves for the fantastic job you're doing within the counselling services, but because I know the pressures you've been under. 9% of students say they're stressed or anxious with their life at their institution, while 23% say quite often. So there's a lot of stress. Sorry, I should have inserted that 9% of students say they're always stressed or anxious with their life at their institution, while 23% say quite often. So stress and anxiety has arisen across both Malaysia and indeed across institutions globally. But as I want to emphasize, the excellence in counselling across Malaysia is superb, particularly as you've had to switch to online services. We also collect lots of anecdotal data, and I get the sense from the anecdotal data, the students who make open comments within our survey, that although the level of stress has increased, students appear to be less apprehensive about accessing services, and there's more openness in confronting the issues. I know there's an issue about admitting that you need assistance and need help, but I get the sense as the usage increases, students and both parents as well are becoming less closed, more open about confronting some of these issues. So I hope those opening remarks sort of frame the debate. I hope I haven't gone over my allotted 5-minute time. Anybody who wants to contact me, just drop me a line, please. There's my email address. We've got lots of data that we hopefully can help in framing debates, and obviously any institution who wants to talk to me and any individual, please just drop me a line. Jimmy, I hope I didn't run over my time. Thanks so much for allowing me to frame the debate in those opening few minutes.
Yep, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Guy. So yeah, because I have forgotten just now. So today is a special day for our Indian community. It's actually a new year. So for those who are celebrating, I would like to wish a happy new year to all of you. So, and also thank you very much, Mr. Guy, for the insightful data and also a very interesting information that we results for students' well-being.
Thanks, Jimmy.
Yep, thank you. So now let's move on and also begin our first session by our student panel. So our moderator for this session is Dr. Zulfikar Ahmad. So Dr. Zul is a director of Counseling Center, University Technology Mara, UTM, since 15 February 2018. So he graduated with a Bachelor of Human Science Psychology Honours from IIUM, International Islamic University of Malaysia, and then continue his studies in Masters of Education, Guidance and Counseling. He holds a Doctor of Philosophy, Education Counseling degree from International Islamic University of Malaysia, IIUM, starting his career at UTM on 3rd January 2005 as a Pegawai Runding Cara at the Counseling and Career Center, UTM KL. So he started his career as a psychologist or counselor by becoming an assistant consultant psychologist at Malaysian Psychology Center for a year, 2001, in the field of corporate and family. So his experience in delivering motivational talk sessions and career in schools, leadership and helpful skills courses. In addition, he often invited to provide corporate trainings in the areas of communication, motivation in workplace, team building, and quality services. So his areas of expertise includes industrial and organizational psychology, parenting and child psychology, marital affairs and relationship, human development, Islamic psychology, and also counseling. So without further ado, I'll invite Dr. Zul, and the stage is yours.
Thank you, Jimmy. Just a bit corrections there. That is University Technology Malaysia. People,
sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. Because people are often saying that the University Technology Mara. Okay. Thank you again, Jimmy, for inviting me to be the moderator for the first sessions today for the students panel discourse. And I'm wishing everyone a very good morning, my fellow colleagues. I have my guru here, so I should be presenting well. That is one of the moderator is Professor Dr. Shukran Abdul Rahman. That's my big guru, my big sifu, Professor Dato Nozaini Alman, Michael Prof, and the rest fellows. Honoring our panels students today for our discourse. We heard, thank you, Mr. Gapering, for the I would say that is a bit honored for us as the director of one of the counseling center in Malaysia and representing Makuma Majlis Counseling Kejaya University Awam Malaysia, being a vice chair for the counseling, and it is honor when seeing that the stage or the acknowledgement for the counselings and the counselling services for our fellow counsellors. It goes to everyone, counsellors in Malaysia. Yes, throughout this pandemic, well-being, student well-being is a big issue, and we have been responsible for it, given the task by the university, by the institutions to cater about these issues. And I believe we only there to assist and to accommodate our students, in which they are our great clients, and we need to cater them. They are the futures of our nations. And today, to start off with this course, we invited four of our students representing their institutions. I believe they also represent some of the ideas. We represent the general ideas of our students who are currently going through the pandemics ever since back in March 2019. It was 2019, right? How time's really fast. Okay, so now I would like to invite first Miss Ifah Sarah binti Khairi Harry. Okay, Assalamualaikum, Ifah. How are you?
Waalaikumsalam. Good.
Okay, now Ifah, she's from the Center for Foundation Study atau Pusat Asasi International Islamic Malaysia. Okay, and from Gambang, UIAM Gambang, and currently Ifah, she's doing Asasi or Foundation on English for International Communication. There will be a short form for it is NCOM. Correct me if I'm wrong. There's NCOM, right, Ifah?
Yeah, it's correct. It's correct.
Thank you, Ifah, for being here. Next, we have okay, next we have Brother Muhammad Nabil Muhammad Ali, Yemenis, our international students, panels from UTHM. How are you, Brother Nabil? Let's tell me. Your mic probably. Hope your network is okay. I think you're mute there, Brother Nabil. Okay, some of Barnabas, he's doing information technology, degree in information technology. Okay, next we have from one of the representative from private college. There is brother atau Mr. Ishraf Ilman bin Badrul Hisham from Sunway University, who is taking actuarial science. How are you, Brother Iman, Brother Ishraf? Should call you Brother Ishraf.
Doing good.
Very good, thank you. And finally, we have brother or Mr. Muhammad Haziq Imran bin Nur Muhammad, was currently studying at the Polytechnic Balik Pulau, taking digital technology all the way from Terengganu, and currently doing online. How are you? Assalamualaikum, Brother Haziq.
Waalaikumsalam. I'm good.
Alhamdulillah. Okay, let's just start the ball rolling. Okay, now we've been going through the pandemics. Some of you guys joined the university during the time of pandemics. So can you share a bit of experience, probably every one of you, to share the experience, starting with Ifah. How is it like to have study or joining the university during the pandemic itself?
For me, it was I'm always looking forward, like entering university face to face, right? So it was a bit of a downer, to be honest, to enter the university online, but nonetheless it was a great experience for me.
You actually say it's a great experience then, in terms of your well-being, because you did mention it's about kind of a different experience. How do you find it in terms of well-being, students there?
In terms of well-being, it was actually, for me at least, for me, it was less stressful, because you don't have to prepare for like the social situations like packing your stuff to the university and so on. So being in the comfort of your own home is actually less stressful for me.
Okay, thank you. Brother Nabil, as international students, how do you find, probably you can share a bit of your experience in your, personal well-being during this pandemic in terms of your study. How do you find it?
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Uh, I would like to share my opinion about that. For the students who do study in the pandemic time, they can't share them information as well because they stay at home all the time. So when we need to, for me, I prefer that we study is inside the university. But as the cases in Malaysia is high, and then we have to study at home online. But we don't show, but in the beginning of my years, I was studying inside the components. So when I study there, I feel that I can share more experience inside and also have more relation with the doctors face to face to introduce more. Also, if I don't understand some things, I need to ask doctor directly that he can explain in front of me, and then doctor also make sure that student all are focusing for with him or with her. Also can when we need to do a presentation in front of our friends in the class, so that will be grateful or helpful to have more experience how to contact with other person.
Okay, that's great. That's great. So you can actually do some comparisons since that you've been in the campus before the pandemics and during the pandemic is a bit obvious. What call that? New lifestyle. You know,
Yeah.
right? Okay, thank you. Brother Ashraf, what about you as a private institution from the private institutions? How do you see this as it's totally new experience, right? Especially in personal well-being. How do you find it during the pandemic itself?
Yeah, so I was fortunate enough to start my study before the pandemic happened. So when I was doing foundation for 1 year in the same college, university. But then back on March 2020, it was a big shock. I was myself very shocked because it's a very new, unexpected changes that you have to forcefully adapt. So for the first few months, I wasn't very used to it because now it's just like studying and staring at the screen. There's lack of social interactions. There's lack of seeing friends, having that university life. Now it's just at home, right? So on the academic side, it was a bit hard for me because even though study is important, it's hard for me to get motivation sometimes because I'm always at home, right? Yeah, so not just me actually, a lot of students I know, my friends, especially, they experience the same thing because there are some students, they adapted it very quickly. They have already properly adjusted to studying at home, but there are still some who still taking time, long process, and there are also some who just are unable to adapt. So for me, it took me a while to adapt, and eventually I got used to it, and yeah, it's still trying my best.
That's great. That's great. That's great. Yeah. For some people, it may take time, and we'll talk about how we actually manage those challenges later. Now, let's go to Brother Haziq and Shaziq. Now, Haziq, do you actually, as a diploma student, are you experiencing the same thing? Because we're talking about the new. When we talk about during the pandemic itself, and this is totally new to everyone. And as a diploma student, what kind of experience you're talking about here in terms of your personal well-being during the pandemic?
Yeah, impact of COVID-19 pandemics on student life has been tremendous, especially for those in college, including me. Learning via online in hostel during the pandemic was quite challenging. I need to cope with stress and loneliness due to social distancing, isolation, and self-quarantine. As a result, I miss out most on the college vibrant social life.
There seems that every one of you is like unanimously agrees about most of the issues is in regards to interacting, whether you're interacting with your lecturers, your friends, and adapting. So how do you actually, overcome, or how do you actually manage all these kind of challenges in order to maintain, your well-being is on a good track? Probably, yeah. Ifa, how do you actually manage all this? And despite knowing all these kind of situations, you actually experience it and going through it. How do you manage this?
For me, it was it was hard at first, but I think like I got used to it. For like academically speaking, it was hard for me to like get any motivation to do like my assignment and tasks and all. And I usually like focus on the simpler tasks and first, and then proceed to the difficult ones, so that I could like gain like more motivation and confidence as I go on. And um, still for now, I still have trouble like managing it still. So I think that's all for me.
I mean, you're still picking up some of the challenges and try to find ways to manage it, right?
Yes, there's still some struggles.
And Ashraf, what about you?
So how I cope with it is took me a while to figure out is actually most importantly is to always keep in touch with your friends, your classmates, and your lecturers, because that way that you know that you're not struggling alone, because
Mhm.
the other students are struggling also. So if you all share the same struggle and find a way to create a solution together on going through this pandemic, I think that's very motivating. So I would say that my friends, especially my like classmates, they really helped me a lot. So for me, how I cope was I was able to keep in touch with them, and then was fortunate enough to have like some like university clubs like actuaries clubs. They tried their best to create a modem for students, where they come and communicate with each other, and then they will try to do the social events. And then like not just that, also for like other university clubs also, I can tell, like for example, like one of the clubs I know, Sunway International Student Ambassador, they deal with international community in Sunway. uh, I would say that they are also the most front line on dealing with students' well-being, because we're having a lot of international students who came to Malaysia, then suddenly, isolation, never experience the outside life of their country. The only thing they do is just stay at home. So for them, for the international students, it's the toughest for them. So they also do the same thing, creating modems. They're trying their best to uh, make it social events, to make sure that students are well connected and not alone. So yeah, from this I benefited from that, and yeah.
Yeah, but Nabil, as an international student who are studying in Malaysia, how do you actually, I mean, as what Brother Ishraf was saying just now, how do you manage this kind of challenges? Because yeah, your family is being away, it's not here, and then you have very limited access to fellows around you, lecturers, friends. So how do you go, in dealing with this kind or managing this kind of situation?
Starting with the first time of the pandemic, because as I'm here living alone as an international student, I need to handle everything by myself, also staying at home all the time. Of course, pandemic also give us most free times that we don't spend the times to going outside, or we just stay at home. So in that time, I was manage my time to attend my classes and also do some exercise with my friends. We can create a Google Meet that we can learn together. If we don't understand, also opening YouTube to learn. Also, the worst challenge situation happens to me inside the pandemics was when we want to wake up for the classes. Sometimes just we just attend some late times. Sometimes we attend in the at time. Also in the quizzes, when we do quizzes and testing a test or final exam online, that in the first time it was difficult because we changed the rule from paper and to online exam. We got some some challenges in the pandemic, but we continue to study. Alhamdulillah.
Haziq, Alhamdulillah. Haziq, now Polytechnic probably have a different, lifestyle as compared to universities level. Now, do you actually interact during the pandemic itself? Do you actually interact? Do you actually seek some, what do you call that, advice from your lecturers, from your colleagues? How do you manage? I mean, like, yeah, is it really happens? So, from your perspective, do you seek some of this advice from your lecturers during the pandemic?
I take advice
Haziq?
from my lecturers and my family,
Mm-hmm.
and I do some exercise and reciting as well to my reading.
So in terms of study, despite I mean, apart from your lecturers, your friends, do you get some consult from the student affairs office, from the departments, whenever that you need something, Haziq? So do you also refer to them?
Yeah, I refer to that.
Okay. So yeah, we know that we've been talking about academic experience during the pandemics. Now the core things that we are discussing here is actually well-being, in which it is somehow managed by the student affairs, at your institution. So how actually does your student affairs really assist you or cater your well-being when you are away from the institutions? Ishraf?
So, student affairs here in Sunway University, they really tried the best to provide a modern. They really tried the best to, because like when, especially for those students who just came to university during the pandemic, I would say that that was the toughest time for the student affairs in Sunway University, because they came and just meet a laptop, so they never had really a physical connection with the university, and that's when we say that most of them are left out. So the student first, they took it very seriously, and they really tried their best to reunite most of these students who are left out, students who are lonely, students who are struggling alone, with the studies and very stressed out over it. So I would say that from what I know, the student affairs in Sun University, they introduce a lot of things. They try to they encourage, especially with the student council, the top head of the clubs. They encourage every club to try their best to make a lot of virtual events that cater to their needs, according to what the clubs represent. And also the student affairs here, they took counseling and mental health services seriously also, very seriously. And really like to try and spread awareness on to every student, because also like students also who just came to Sun University, they struggle a lot in terms of, some of them got the information, on how to use the services and stuff. They're very lucky, but some, they have lack of information, they have imperfect information. So there's a very big disproportionate of people, some have and some don't have. So it's very tough. So like the student affairs are trying their best to really spread their services for everyone equally. So yeah, like through clubs, they try their best through clubs. They try their best to do for modems, awareness, mental health services awareness, and so be, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Ifa, how do you find it? How effective it is back in your institution in responding to these well-being needs of the students during the pandemic?
I think it was effective for my institution, similar to Brother Ishraf earlier. We also did like mental health talks. They provide like counseling sessions for the students to utilize. And recently they've did this program called the peer sharing space for students to share their stress and struggles and help each other out. And they also have like a lot of virtual activities so that we wouldn't feel like left out for not experiencing the campus life. And it's a really great thing for them to do.
Oh, well, that's great. That's great. Haziq, and what about your institution in Polytechnic? How do you find it effective? I mean, like in terms of the response towards the students' well-being, if you were to request one?
There was a time when my classmate was infected with COVID-19. My institution has attacked swiftly by isolating those affected and sending them to hospitals for screening, tests, and treatment. The institution has asked us to undergo a screening test for students in close contact and spared us for self-quarantine. Adequate food
during
and
the
drink were
quarantine?
provided. Sure, we are doing well.
Oh, okay, that's good. I'm about to ask that question. How they treat you during the quarantine? So they really serve you with all the necessities then, is it?
Sorry, because
the institutions provide the institutions really provides the necessities that you need when you were when you were quarantined, when the student were quarantined inside the institution.
Yeah. Provided
So
food and
enough
drink
food.
and what?
Okay. And what about Brother Nabil? Institutions. I mean, yes, we heard that UTHM has one been under the lockdown, if I'm not mistaken. So, were you during that time, and how did the institution response towards this lockdown in campus during that time?
Actually, in our university, UTHM, I don't think that our university is do affecting, but for myself, yeah, the effective with my university was we can get that great that we can do our courses online. Also, we can have some like, for example, we get in our system, we can get author, we can download the notes or like slides from there. Also, we can attend with the university, also give some reports to university about our case, about our problem in our in these studies during the pandemic.
Okay. Means all the facilities, they're taking care of the facilities to ensure that the online classes for students are going well. Is that what you mentioned just now, right? Brother Nabil?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, going back to Haziq. Haziq, now, can you see some of the coping mechanism that used by your friends, your fellow friends, colleagues, right, during these pandemics, to ensure that they really maintain their personal well-being in connection with what the institutions provides to you guys? How do you actually cope with this in order to remain positive and stress-free? What is it? Okay, Ashraf, would you like to to share about the coping mechanisms that used by you or your friends to remain positive and stress-free?
Yeah, so coping mechanism, like usually for me, because even though pandemic came and there's a lot of adjustments to be made when it comes to study routines and again adjusting to the academic online. Uh, I would say that one of the benefits that online studying gives us is that flexibility also. Okay. So from that flexibility and from there being home, I tend to spend more time doing my personal activities, whatever hobbies that I like to do. So from there, I am able to look for my coping mechanism by doing certain things that I do at home, like whether it be like being my family more often, or watching TV with my family, and so on. So that was for me. Among my friends is usually I have some friends who they desire to take they wanted to stay fit and but still it's at the same time they study, and also there are some of the students they really want to involve themselves in more university life as much as they can, even though it's physical. So like for the one that's like wanting to be physically fit and stuff, they tend to organize online workouts, and we have our clubs here in Sun University, Sun Gym Club. They really want students to be fit online, I mean during pandemic. So they will organize this online events where they encourage a lot of students to join in and work out together, which is very nice and positive, so that they can cope well by being physically active. And other sections of whether it be trying to experience the fullest of university life, whether it be making friends and interacting and sharing with opening up with other students. So there are a lot of clubs outside there also. They provide these services to students to socialize in the second, so that they can become socially healthy. And also Sunday also, our university also provides those uh, mental health counselor services, like how I told you earlier, so that they are always prepared 24/7 for students who wants to express themselves, whether it be publicly or anonymously, about the struggles in the university. So I would say that this is what my university provides facilities for me, and this is on the personal level. This is what I do personally, whether it be personal personal activities that I do, and even our university also encourages us to if you're, since it's at home, you have to try your best to continue your habits at home if you have. So yeah.
That's great. That's great. That's great. Brother Nabil, you and your fellow country mates or other international students, right? Probably is a big difference in terms of their coping mechanism as compared to our local students. So, what do you do actually in order for you guys to be actually, composed and remain positive and yeah, during the pandemic? Is it like a bit similar situations with what Brother Ishraf or Mr. Ishraf had just now, or you got something different in terms of coping mechanism?
It is same, but there is a little bit different, which is for contacting with our also international friends here. As we live in the same area, sometimes we used to meet after pandemic, and then we can meet our senior also to help us to understand more, because sometimes in classes we miss some things, so we need to ask the doctor, also our seniors, about that. Also the like a daily life, for a normal life, we just we are confused at that time because everyone worry about this virus, about COVID-19. We just we don't know that we have to cover ourselves, we have to wear a mask, and then we are worried if we die or just we will keep life. Also, we ask our parents to do for us. Also, our parents support us by give us some advice that we have to be patient, and then just focusing on our studies. That's it.
Okay, thank you, brother Azik. Is it the same or what we mentioned by Brother Ishraf and Brother Nabil? In a polytechnic setting, are you having almost the same coping mechanism, or is there any other differences with them on the university level? Azik?
Yeah.
What about your own coping mechanism, your fellow friends, in order to remain positive and stress-free throughout the pandemic?
And stress. To remain positive and stress-free, my friend and I will discuss integrate to our learning projects or assignment either in the cafe by using online apps such as Discord, WhatsApp, and Telegram. We will support each other, and if there is an issue, we will collaborate on ideas, advice, and suggestion to solve it. Furthermore, we will make this our discussion with our lecturer is meaningful if they are available at the time.
Okay, thank you. Ifa, and what about you? You did mention about counseling just now, right? It's probably one of the coping mechanisms. And what else?
For us, since during the pandemic, we kind of miss the social activities. We try to resort to like game stuff. And recently, and during the pandemic, there's actually a lot of like open world games that me and my friends could use to like socialize with each other without actually going outside. And if I remember correctly, we also did like watching movies together and stuff like that, like catching up on the social stuff that we really crave since during the pandemic. And for academically, there's also the club activities. For me, I have the theater club, and we did like acting talk, and and it was really refreshing and fun for me. I never thought I would miss socializing with people, to be honest.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much, guys. Now I think probably the last part of it. Now we do have some of the management of the university, of the institution here with us as a participants today. Probably there is something, bringing up the voice of a student to ensure that the well-being of you guys been taken care of, and probably some improvement needs to be carried out by the institution. uh what would like to have, for you guys, by your institution, to ensure that well-being is taken care, especially during the pandemic. We are going into endemic. What would you like it to be from your institution? Probably I start with Haziq. What would
Yeah.
you like to your institution to do? Your wish list.
I would like my institution to work together and discuss with students from time to the time to ensure the well-being of students, especially in terms of student mental health, by providing mental health awareness. For example, institutions should proactively share mental health information with students during face-to-face orientation session. As
Thank
as
you.
the
Yeah, thank you, Brother Haziq. And Ashraf, what will be your wish
Yeah.
list for your institutions?
So like I believe that universities can improve much better when it comes to academically, right? So I realized that academically, like when it comes to doing exams online and stuff, some students find it more stressful because it's very hard for them to, they lack motivation to study, you know. So that's one of the hardest parts when it comes to the structure of the academic itself for specific subjects, for example. So I think that it would be nice if the universities that would further cater to students' needs with the online environment. Like for example, maybe like since on exams make students more stressful online because they have lack of motivation to study, why not give them more practical fun work to do, like those fun assignments that they can put on the structure of the subject, so like students can still enjoy studying at home with that suitable subject structure overall. And secondly is maybe lecturers can, because I realized that some students are well connected lecturers, some students are still very disconnected with the lecturer. So it would be nice if the lecturers also, they provide a personalized service for each student to see how they are doing, not just academically, but personal well-being, so that students are more connected to what they're learning about, So that's academically, yeah. So like it would be nice if it was the model, the design of the academic model was more catered to students, so that it's less stressful. And other than academics, it would be nice, like usually like how I said, like most students, there's still a lot of students out there that are still left out. There's some lucky students that they are together already because they have some, they already have circle of friends and connections and they involve in clubs, but other students still don't have that. So usually these are responsible club, but usually from what I see in my university, be engaged in this, but I would say not very profoundly, fully efficiently, you know. So if the university and student fairs and they communicate with the students, you know, to
Thank
come
you.
up with a proper model of, you know, it's like I would say like it's an online university, but a model where students still feel like, you know, as if they're still in the physical university, you know, where students can still see each other.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Brother Ishraf.
Yeah.
Sister Ifa, what would you like to have? One of your wish list for your institution.
For me, it would be providing like students the appropriate amount of rest period, because for me, my mid-semester breaks are only 2 days, and I don't mind 2 days, I don't mind, but I don't know why they did it on the weekends. I don't know why they did the mid-semester breaks on weekend, and that literally drained took a toll on me, and I'm immediately stressed about that. So I think it's good for this university to like give students a appropriate amount of rest period, and also better management in catering the student needs. So that's all.
Thank you, Ifa. Thank you, Ifa. Nabil, in short, we are running out of time. In short, Nabil, what will be your wish list? Probably you'll be the voice of our international students here in Malaysia. What will be the wish list to cater your well-being at your institution?
For my wish for the beginning students, lecture must have focus for the beginner students to make sure that to give him all the knowledge, because in the first year of the students, if he don't like get all the ideas very well, so he will get difficult in the second and third semester. This is one thing. Also the second thing, which is about the service about university. As we know that in the pandemic, we cannot go to inside the university, but like, for example, in the near future, make sure all the students, even international, also local, make sure the students are feel comfortable to go to university who living outside the university. Last things, which is for the lecture in our university, they are doing great actually for my in my faculty. One more things, we need to like to get some rest, as my friends, if I said for example 1 month for the to restore our students. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Brother Nabil. Thank you so much. And that's it. That's we have it, guys. Fellow audience, we heard it from our younger generations, our fellow students, and they really voiced out what they went through throughout the pandemic stage, and point taken, and in moving forward as institutions, you know, they really gave some good ideas, especially models of academics, you know, some facilities, the involvement of students, the interactions students with the institutions. I think they really voiced it out, and in hope that this discourse will be a platform for our students and our institutions to come together, you know, as a melting pot, to come up with the great ideas in order to build our nation. These are the future of our generation, and hope that our PenDaPaT Discourse series, series 1 to 2022, will achieve its objective. I'm Dr. Zulfikar Ahmad. I'm signing off. So thank you again, especially Sister Ifa Sarah, Brother Muhammad Nabil, Brother Ishraf, and Muhammad Haziq. All the best for your future undertaking, inshallah. And again, thank you so much for participation. I'm signing off. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Have a very good day. Stay
Thank you
safe and
so
stay
much.
healthy.
Thank you so much, Doctor.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you to our student panel and Dr. Zulfikar for moderating the session. I believe it's a fruitful session, hearing the voices from the student. So next, we'll move on to our next agenda to hear the response from our academic panel. This session will be moderated by Dr. Antun. So Dr. Antun de Rijke, PhD, is a Belgian national who has lived and worked in Malaysia since 2010. He has held lecturing and research position at the University Malaya, Taylor's University, Berjaya University College, and ICOM. Dr. Antun, as he is known, is currently employed at UCSI University. His research interests are discourse, communication, and news media in the Asia-Pacific region. He is interested in societal issues such as crisis or fake news and examines how these phenomena are discursively represented as social practices. One of his pioneering achievements in this respect is Discourse and Crisis 2013, published by John Benjamin and co-edited by Professor Zuraida Muhammad Don from UM. His contribution to Malaysia's higher education has also seen him take up various leadership positions, such as Associate Dean for Research and Postgraduate Studies and Head of Department. So over to you, Dr. Antun.
Well, thank you, Jimmy, and a very good morning to everyone. I think I'm being spotlighted now. Hello, hi again. Thank you, Jimmy, and good morning, everyone. And I would like to begin by welcoming three panelists and actually the universities they represent. And first, I will take you on a virtual tour, if you like, of Malaysia. First, we go to the University of Malaysia, Sabah, and more particularly the FT Labuan branch campus. And there we meet Nur Iman Rizal, right? She's a student counselor, a psychology officer, and she will talk, I think, very knowledgeably about counseling and welfare, the section that she also manages. Our next one is Chuan Tekpeng. Mr. Chuan, he's with Tunku Abdul Rahman University College, or TAR UC as it's known, Malaysia, where he is the program leader for public relations. So also welcome to you, Mr. Chuan. The last one is Kale Jyoti Sahadevan. She is a senior lecturer that will be in Quest International University. And there is the School of Communication, where she is the internship and program coordinator. So thanks again, all three of you, for making time. We're happy to have such a wide range of higher education providers, as I said, different parts of the country, and a very interesting lineup of guests. Before I will start with the questions that will guide the discussion, I'd like to give each and every one of you an opportunity to have a brief opening statement. Anything I missed when I was introducing you, you can add something to that. What connects you to today's topic, student well-being? Are we doing it right? So what are we doing? How are we doing it? And how do we evaluate this? So starting with maybe Jyoti, right? So just a brief opening statement. Maybe you would like to already respond to one of the things the students said, maybe a key take-home point to frame the issue and what's going to transpire in the next 40 minutes. Jyoti.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Antun. With the topic of well-being today, at Quest, of course, we look into we oversee students' needs. And in my position, I actually oversee students who go for internships, especially during the pandemic time. We have, of course, a different ball game altogether. And of course, I also oversee students who are in the program for journalism, which I'm in charge. So in this particular aspect, I actually would like to share some thoughts. And I really appreciate when one of the students just now, they actually, all of them actually spoke very well. And they said about, engagement with lecturers and so on. And this is something that I would also like to contribute. Yes.
Right, thank you, Jyoti. I think we definitely come back to the relationship and perhaps the changing relationship between lecturers and students. Mr. Chuan, I understand that you are here for a very good reason, because you seem to have been involved from the get-go in 2020 when the MCO started. So can you tell us a bit about what, again, the main reason you qualified for the panel, and maybe
Thank you
some
so
opening
much,
statement
Dr.
about
Antun.
some issues or.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm Mr. Chuan. I'm from Tunku Abdul Rahman University College. Yesterday, we kind of like just announced that we've been upgraded into a university status. I mean, together with my other colleagues, because when MCO hit us, right, it hit us with a shock because it came so suddenly. So a few of us, right, we kind of like were inside the team, right, to plan how to transition from normal face-to-face teaching and learning into online learning. And of course, we need to kind of like figure out, right, when you teach online, it's really totally different from face-to-face teaching and learning. So how would you kind of like guide your fellow lecturers and tutors, right, in terms of planning lesson plans, in terms of how would you conduct assignments, right, and how would you actually organize the rubrics, the marking schemes for assessing online assignments, online-based assignments. And of course, right, when we talk about examination, we can't do it physically. We've got to move all examinations online. So how would you actually plan the questions, you know, during final exams that are more critical rather than getting students to just copy paste it from Google? The other thing that I want to add is that I think if we look at the universities or university colleges or colleges as these institutions as a second home for our young people, our students, right? Then we should actually treat it as a community. We should take care of each other. And when we talk about well-being forum today, right? I wish all of you well. I hope that we will have a good discussions today. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Yeah, very interesting. You also mentioned the assessment, which I think one of the students brought up as well. And I think I'd like to end that sort of opening round with Noor Iman, perhaps the most qualified of all of us, because you are a student counselor. So would you mind telling us and perhaps the audience a bit about what is university counseling or the counseling we provide to our students? What does it actually involve from within your own workplace? And what are some of the usual things that you would be looking into before COVID, and then I guess when COVID and the pandemic started? So over to you, Noor.
Hello, hi, Dr. Antun and my fellow panelists. Thank you so much for the brief introduction. So I'm Iman, and I have been a student counselor working under the Student Affairs Department for about 16 years of service. And apart from performing my role as a counselor, I'm also managing the students' welfare unit. So it's actually a combination of both. So my section is called as Counseling and Welfare section. So thank you so much for inviting me for this discourse, because the topic itself is directly related to our purpose of services. So counseling itself basically provides guidance and counseling both to individuals or group supports. So we attend referral cases mostly by the faculty, conduct motivational talks, and establish a student peers group where we keep their roles active in engaging with their fellow peers. We create awareness for mental health issues, engage students with community services, and collaborate programs with the main campus, governments, agencies, and NGO. So to answer in regards to the purpose of the discourse today, so I would like to say that students have primary goals to fulfill and to succeed in their studies. Number one is to succeed in their studies and to graduate. And in order to fulfill this, as what have been shared by our panels from students, they have commitments, academic commitments like attending work, they're completing their course assignments, they have project presentation, mentor-mentee sessions, and of course, the quizzes and exam. So in order to achieve this, students need to be mentally and emotionally capable to adapt and to cope with their day-to-day demands. So, however, when the inability, if some students are facing with coping problems, so their well-being might be at stake. So this is where the counseling and guidance services come into role. I believe this discourse is a great platform for all of us to exchange information on this matter. And coming from our university itself, we believe that we have some university experiences as well in approaching the well-being issues. And apart from that is to also learn and capture some best practices from other academic institutions as well. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Noor Iman, also. One of the first questions I'd like to, following on from what you're saying, is, of course, we have the significance and importance of the student counseling service, but from the student panel, we also learned that there is sort of this idea of a go-to person, which often for students would be the lecturer. So can we all reflect before we look at the other issues? So how does the universities you work at, how do they distinguish between, let's say, what is the relationship generally between the academic side and the counseling side? And when students approach a lecturer, are the lecturers well enough informed and trained about being a frontline provider? Is there a referral system? Because I understand the student counselors themselves also have to maybe decide if students have to be referred to, psychiatrists and so on. So how does that work? I mean, what is the role division and perhaps some of the challenges and tensions between, let's say, ordinary lecturer on the one hand, like myself, and then the professional counselors on the other hand? And Mr. Chuan, would you like to start here on this one? Yeah.
Thank you, sir. I think on our side, right, when we look at RUC, where I work at, I think the first level would be the counseling unit. These are made up of professional counselors. We've got a few of them, my colleagues, and they come under the Department of Student Affairs. So what students can do is this: there are actually notices on the intranet. There are actually what you call an announcement and post through our Facebook page, where students can actually directly approach each of the counselors to actually talk to them about whether it's about academic or mental or even certain personal problems and well-being. So the other way of looking at it is that we as lecturers, when we actually come face to face with students who've actually approached us, or even their program representatives who actually talk to us about one of their classmates or course mates having certain problems during certain semesters or certain weeks, right? We could actually, as lecturers, refer the case over to the counselors unit. So the thing is that the counselors, when they take up the cases, right, it is one of the most important thing is that it is the initiative of that particular student to actually contact the counselors. We will not force, we will not instruct, we will advise that there are counseling services or assistance available to university students, and they would have to take the initiative to actually talk to the counselors. Many times they actually go with their course mates. So I think that's a good thing, because you're supposed to not just help friends with studies, you should actually help friends personally in terms of a friendship point of view. Now, the second level that we have, right, would be, as you mentioned, if we are educators, okay, what can we do? So we have something called a student advisory system. Now, this one plays the role in terms of lecturers as liaison, because we come face to face with students daily, whether it's before COVID or during COVID and now the post-pandemic. So we will come face to face with students, whether it's physically or online. So we could actually talk to the students, you see, in terms of recommending or referring them to the counselors. And many times, right, the cases, I hope so, it's not that serious. And we actually played the role of advising as a mentor to the students, right? To kind of like guide them, right? Not just academically, but also perhaps mentally. And the third level that I want to bring out is that we have a student representative council, what we call SRC. It used to be called Student Welfare Council, but they changed it a few years ago into Student Representative Council, because these representatives, right, which are also fellow students, they are voted in their yearly elections, and the office holders or the members of the SRC, they deal with students directly in terms of not just their welfare, but they also bring up certain concerns, especially during COVID-19, in terms of facilities that are available, in terms of, are there any problems in terms of online learning? Not because of the system, but actually because of the information technology at home. Perhaps the line is not clear, perhaps the network is too weak. So they also have activities before COVID, right, where they actually encourage students to join, and not just to study at the university, but work with each other in terms of personal development. So I think these three levels of perhaps channels that can take care or manage to assist in the well-being of students, whether in studies or personally, I think it actually contributes to the welfare of students over at our side. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I think it also sort of shows how you can sort of beautifully integrate the academic side and the counseling one. Well, let's go to Quest International now. Jyoti, I mean, from your point of view, would you answer that question about how do we differentiate between certain responsibilities and duties between lecturers and the ones who work with the students day to day, and then the counseling unit or the well-being services?
Yes, as everyone has said, actually from the university level, the academic and career development, we have student life affairs, we have, and where counselors come in. A lot of support are given to our students, especially during the pandemic, where it is only virtual classrooms. They have no interaction per se with any of us, with the counselors, with the student board, even extracurricular activities that they have, as the students say, they lacked the social interaction, having fun, laughing, they never exercise their jaws probably for a long time. Yeah. So coming back to us, at a level where the educators are actually the key institutional actors actually, of forming this engagement with the students. And we have this, I would say it's rather good mentor-mentee system, where the lecturer actually has a separate session than during lectures time, where they talk to the students about their problems, about issues of learning, engagement. But what I saw was during the pandemic, they were, when it comes to technological use, they were like fish to water. They were better than us. We started seeing students were earlier than us in classes. Wow, it was amazing. And initially, when we were starting, and we also, have to transform ourselves immediately, becoming technologically savvy. Before that, we were like, a little bit and so on. And then we had like Google Classroom. Immediately we had to go before we went to the one that MQA endorsed. The Jamboard session, they loved it, so there was a lot of engagement because students were able to create something. But over time, we, some of the things that they wanted to go back to campus, right? Because they lacked that engagement and so on. No interaction, no, getting to know one another, no laughing, I think, or raging about current issues in the country, this is what campus will do to us as students, young minds, brimming with ideas and, able to express it, so these are the things that they were lacking very badly. But of course, we also felt that certain behavioral patterns of students we were not able to identify, because students were able, most of the time they mute themselves, their video is off, and when we asked them, and one of the issues that students had was in the transition, they were, having noises. They couldn't have a separate room to themselves. Noises, family members, children, their siblings, children. So, and probably if it's an 8 o'clock class in the morning, they would just be on bed and, talking to us, and they don't want to turn on the camera at all. So we don't know their, if there is any inhibitions in themselves, any hesitancy in their behavior of their well-being. There are students with special needs as well. Sometimes we may think it's mild, because they respond, but we don't know the stress. And one of the stresses is for students with special needs, group work was difficult for them. Yeah, because they will have to talk online. When we give them, we break, initially there were no breakout rooms they have to do on their own. And then assignments, projects they have to do. So there were students who approached us and told us that, look, it's very difficult for us to work with this student, And while we want, diversity, plurality in engagement with students, need to know that they cannot always work with people that they like or same wavelength with them. They know that when you go to work, when you meet, if you go outside the campus life, it comes with many colors. So we have to bring all those things inside, engage with the students. But these are some of the concerns that we have, and sometimes when some of our students went for internship, the employers sometimes come and tell basic communication skills. They talk to us like they're friends. So that formal relationship. Sometimes maybe we also maybe didn't notice that because it's a virtual classroom. We don't notice everything, their behavior, how they talk, how they pattern. A lot of the things that we could observe face to face were missing during the transition to the virtual classroom pattern. Of course, over time now we see, when I talk to employers, when I talk to we give training, and in fact, our career development, they actually engage with students before giving them workshops, how groomed, so that you don't have difficulty transitioning into the internship period. Like some students have issues, some problems, especially working from home.
Yeah.
So
very interesting, Jyoti. I really enjoyed that. I mean, it's a lot of things I can relate to as well. I think the casualization almost, because we talk about pseudo intimacy when we work online. So some of that sort of formality has gone. I also zoomed in on what you said. I think the early stages of the MCO and pandemic were different from what happened later on. And I think initially there was almost like a novelty effect, and then it wore off, and then we became some sort of fatigue, virtual classroom fatigue, and then students became a bit more critical, I guess, of how we were doing things delivery-wise, assessment-wise. I think it's also important to look beyond. I mean, the internship is definitely a good angle to look at how we look after students too. I'd like to look at Nur Iman's viewpoint on this. Again, is there a way in which lecturers are being trained to perhaps, even though we don't have the same information as before, to spot? I think they sometimes refer to them as at-risk students. I mean, are lecturers, do you depend on lecturers to be your eyes and ears in the classroom, or are there special activities or training or workshops for lecturers? Because it is indeed the case, I experience it myself, that the relationship is a bit more multiplex than it was before, right? So yeah, over to you, Nur Iman.
Yes, Dr. Antun. Firstly, I would like to put an address to what I think about if students, they approach their lecturers and their fellow peers, either their roommates or their classmates. I look at it at a very positive perspective, because students meet their lecturers and their fellow friends more than counselors do. So they have this, they originally have this existing friendship or interaction more than they do with counselors. So why I say I look at it as at a positive perspective, because this shows that, number one, the student itself is open in confiding their personal issues to their lecturers or anything that's related to their academic matters. And it's also when lecturers, when they attend to their needs, all right, and it means that these students have positive social support in their environment. That's why I look at it as a very in a very positive perspective. And to answer whether is there any a contradictory between seeing a lecturer or a counselor? Well, it is both distinctive and it's also complementary at the same time. Why it's distinctive? Because of the core roles of the two sides, where the lecturers and fellow academicians are to function is to facilitate about their learning, about their academics, right, about their courses, while on our side is to provide about guidance and counseling to deal with their emotions, helping them gaining insights on what's underlying their emotions and their thoughts. So, but however, Well, this is where, as Mr. Chuan and Ms. Jyoti shares, that there is a professional limits between the two. For example, okay, I'll give a situation here. Let's say a program leader contacts me and says that they have received an application for deferment. So the faculty is in the process of reviewing the application. So they say that, Iman, can you please help us look into the matter, and could you please look whether the student is having other problems apart from the academics. So this is how we help each other. So I will look and I will contact the students and have some chit chats or even sessions depending on the needs. So once I finish doing some, maybe we do have some mental status examination for that, and I provide some suggestions to the faculty, but not putting confidential details, because we still have to protect the client's privacy to that. So I can relate as well during pandemic times, as Ms. Jyoti mentioned, it's like fish to the water. So we also have problems in the transitional effect from physical to online. So on my part, I had this one issue that it's still it's quite alarming, where we did a lot of distribution and sharings of to promote our services, and we received all sorts of clients coming from the outside or even inside UMS or outside. But there's this one that we unable to control that much, is when you receive a text message from an anonymous client who is reluctant to share their personal details, but is confiding in you to have some sort of suicidal intention. So if this was happening in our own campus, it would be easier to monitor the students' well-being, because we'll definitely share some detail of the students with the security unit, and the closest is the residential college, right? So that they also have their roommates to look after. So it's easy to monitor in such close distance. But if you receive a client who is anonymous, is a stranger, you don't have their details, and they're reluctant to show to provide that. So it's quite worrisome for us. So that is one big challenge for us in giving our providing our counseling and or guidance sessions.
Yeah, which is part of the bigger issue of which channels are used to reach out to the social well-being, the student well-being. There's a number of questions here about what are we doing, and has there been an increase or some kind of significant changes due to the pandemic, because after all, student well-being has been on the map for many, many years, right? So, and then what are some of the challenges and limitations and constraints? So I think I'm going to bunch all those questions together in some sort of a free flow amongst us, in which we can share what we do, perhaps even details about how things are being done, and then maybe some of the obstacles we tend to bump into. I know as a lecturer that if there are students with special needs, that we usually get to meet up with student affairs, and that we are getting some kind of a briefing. But after that, it's usually sort of left to us, and it doesn't have to be mental health, can be something else as well. So it's sometimes a bit of a challenge where you would then have to take more of an initiative to make that work. So I think, if it's all right by you, so we talk about strategies, we talk about procedures, policies. So how are things being done? And what are some of the, let's say, typical obstacles or challenges? Guy Perring shared the sort of 35% increase in people relying on counseling. So I was wondering, did that put pressure on the counseling service? Were there new hires? Were there budgetary implications? I'm also interested in finding out, do we have more of a voice today at higher management level as student affairs than we ever had? So anyway, so I think it's a bit of a broad topic. So I'd like to maybe start with Mr. Chuan again, and then if anyone feels like chipping in, please do. So it doesn't have to be so regimented QA, if that's all right by you. And then I have 1 or 2 questions to finish the session later. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Antun.
Yeah, thank you.
I think I'll be looking at it from two perspectives. I think that the first one would be lecturers as the frontliners. So lecturers as frontliners, because we come face to face with students, as we all know, and as I mentioned just now. Now, if we're the frontliners, right, most of the time, right, they're more familiar with us. And if certain lecturers are friendlier, if I may use that word, right, they would approach us. I mean, the students would approach us perhaps automatically because they're familiar with us, because they feel that we are friendlier, and they will talk to us about their problems. Of course, they will also talk to us about their joy. Now, the second perspective, right, are like counselors as confidant. So because they're qualified, you see, they're professional counselors, and perhaps, right, certain things, right, where students, young people, when they see us lecturers or educators daily, or twice or 3 times a week, they might not be so confident in, trusting us with their issues. And they might actually think that we're not that qualified. We might be qualified as educators, but we might not be qualified as counselors. So they would seek out counselors, right, professional counselors as confidant, and they will share problems with them. So we can look at these two perspectives, right, from a personal point of view and a professional point of view. So one is that because we're personalized, we personalize our teaching and lessons when we interact with students, we personalize our transaction, our experiences. And because of that, right, they feel good about talking to us. And from the professional point of view, right, it is not that the lecturers are not professional, it's just that we might not have actually be qualified to be counselors. So from if professionalism, right, is the point of view, then students might actually move towards counselors, or their parents might think that counselors are the better person to actually talk to their sons and daughters. So in the end, we're looking at familiarity and also quality. So there's 2 ways of looking at it. They could be familiar with us as educators, right? Therefore, they feel that the quality of interaction is much better because of past experiences that are positive. So perhaps if I have a well-being problem, if I have a concern about my own mental state, I will actually want to talk to the person I'm familiar with. Then I would feel that kind of sharing would be quality in terms of the transaction. Now, but when we look at quality in terms of qualification, then the counselors, right, will be the better person to approach, because the familiarity with the studies of mental state, the familiarity in terms of counseling and giving advice to young people or any person, I think that makes the professional counselor a better bet in terms of approaching for well-being issues. Thank you so much.
Can I just come back to you and also see if you can lift that up to a level where, are you aware of at your TAR, a lot of the questions here are about managing, and I think what is meant is that we don't leave our students' well-being to chance, right? It's not a random sort of thing, we value it. I think most of our MVGs will also highlight student experience and well-being. So if I see the word management, I always think about you take charge, right? You plan, you monitor, you follow up. So how does that work as far as you know, right? Is there a constant dashboard situation where data are being reported to senior top higher management about cases, about follow-up, communication channels? So how does that go? I mean, is that something you would be able to share with us? Or
I believe that whatever matters that has occurred, when we refer students, right, to the counselors, the professionals, Number two, when students talk to us or when our lecturers who advise students, right, and they actually report to program leaders, we do actually bring it up to our own faculty management. Now, in terms of whether it's brought up to the management, or it's up to the dean's, duties and all, but I do understand that there are many lecturers who say, as you mentioned just now, are we capable enough? And number two, right, do we ourselves, right, feel that we're capable enough? So some of the feedback, right, that we've given to the management, not just the faculty, you see, and it's not just during COVID-19, it's before that, is that can we actually increase, can we recruit, can we get more counselors to join us as full-timers? Because as the numbers of students increase, because in TAR UCKL, right, our main campus, we have about 20,000 students, and we're not counting the students who have actually enrolled in our 4 other branches. So if you have an increase of students, and if we look at academic studies or medical studies in terms of how young people face problems and how do they manage their own stress, right? We actually need more counselors to assist. And one of the feedbacks that we have actually given to the management is that, yes, we will need to recruit more educators, of course, but can we also recruit more counselors? Thank you so much.
All right, that's an interesting point. I think, Nur Iman, I would like you to come in here. So the question again is one a bit about how it's organized and managed. And that includes a lot of sort of, I think, communication, data sharing, and then some implications for recruitment, training, maybe hiring. That has, of course, a financial side to it as well. And it was one thing you said about, anyway, I'll come back to it. But how does that work? How does that work at the branch campus level 1?
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Anton, once again. So let me just share a little bit of background in UMS. We have talking about human resource here, right? So we have about around 10 to 15 students in UMS, the overall population itself. And in Lab 1 is around 1,500, and we have 2 faculties here. So for these number of students, we UMS is employing 7 psychology officers. So I'm the only one in Lab 1. So the 6 of them are in Kota Kinabalu. So what we did was we divided these 7 counselors to take care of certain particular areas. For example, so we have 3 counselors caring for the students' targets, and we have 1 counselor placed in human resource department for dealing with human resources issues. And we have 1 psychology counselor which is placed in career and alumni center, and 1 in OKU center. So, but as for now, we have not yet to put 1. I see that we need 1 more psychology counselor to attend our international students, because I believe there are more international students in main campus rather in Lab 1. So so during pandemic, so of course we feel that we are outnumbered, because 7 counselors to take care of the whole university itself, and especially in critical times. So we revised our strategy, and thanks so much to our management who believe in us. So we collaborate. First of all, we set up a team. So we are the psychosocial support team consisting 7 of us. So we are no longer, we are still remaining in our scope, but we are attending all clients, all students, all referrals as much as we can. So second of all is to expand the psychosocial support team network, because we need more. There are other professionals also in this university, which are coming from lecturers under the Faculty of Psychology and Education, because we have lecturers who are also certified and trained in counseling. And we also add up our psychiatrists and our clinical psychologists working in hospital UMS. So how we divided our roles is like, okay, let me just put some example. Firstly, the clinical psychologists from the hospital UMS, they conducted one general DASS, depression, anxiety, stress scale to all the students during the initial pandemic stage. So once we get the result and scores, so those with high score severity in depression, anxiety and stress will be referred to us. So the professionals coming from the faculty will also be in addition to that, so that the students or the staff will have more choices, right? So that is how we expand our network in catering all these demands. And apart from that, we also shared other external support like befrienders, like Miasa and also Talian Kasih. So we promote these brochures to all the students, whether they're in residence or off campus, so they can have more choices if they're not comfortable with the external professionals, or we are out of reach. They also have someone that they can reach out, which is maybe closer to their locals. Yeah.
Would you on the inside differentiate between or specialize in, let's say, first year students, incoming students? We all pay a lot of attention to first year experience, right? Because regardless of the pandemic, the transition from secondary school into university or college is coming with its own sort of, adaptation issues anyway. So is it something that is a way of differentiating and specializing, or do you see the student body as sort of one big homogeneous whole? I'm just trying to get an idea of the more cases among the really the freshmen, if you like, freshmen, freshwomen, or do you have more cases as they progress in the program? Because what I take away from Guy Bering just now is that there is this focus on completing the studies also. So it looks like there are sort of two choke points, if you like, where there might be a higher significant increase in cases. Thank you.
Well, Dr. Antun, we receive a lot of variety of cases coming from coming from either the freshies, the first year students, the final year students, and the second and the third year students, and even the students who are attending for practicum, and even students from the masters. So actually, by the data, majority of the students that we attended are mostly coming from the degree students and the degree students. So it's actually variety of numbers there. It's with let's say if the first year students might be having issues in the courses that they have taken. What are the prospects? All right, and the final year students is motivational, the pressures of going for interns, and for the students who are going to for practicum, their concerns are mostly about how will they perform their practical during pandemic, and the fear of not getting placement. Yes. So it's just during that time we just attended anyone who is available, just attend them. Yeah.
All right. I think talking of internships, and again, I had this sort of Jyoti, you come back into the picture here, but the question is more about sort of what is the sort of the organizational response, institutional preparedness in terms of structures and systems and departments and so on and so forth. So what is the management? What does the management look like in terms of planning ahead, responding? Because when just an aside, when the pandemic hit, the workplace I was in, we had been working on the risk register and risk management, and none of it mentioned pandemic. And we all had to sort of scramble and try and make the most of it in the initial weeks. So I think, so what is in place to to deal with sort of what is the word, an evidence-based, purposeful, focused management of student well-being.
Thank you, Dr. Anton. At Quest, we are actually like a boutique university. We have over 2,000 students now. And in the last survey that we did for the last year, mid of 2021, we had about 137 students going on for internship. Yeah, and most of them actually showed like over 80% actually showed satisfaction. A small percentage say that they are neutral and they wouldn't recommend that company to the juniors. About 5 to 8%. So roughly we have done surveys as a university. Our career development division has always engaged with employees time to time to see how we can improve. And whether, like for example, one of the issues that we did discuss was about remuneration, some kind for the students sometimes, but from our studies, less than about 25% only, over 75% have received some kind of, stipend monthly amount that they can use. Of course, we cannot request, but we found that, by giving them some compensation is actually very positive in both ways. So this is what we suggest, and we hope that it will be some companies, they pay very well actually, sometimes over 1,000, yeah, some between 200 to 500, I think roughly 500 and all that. So this is also sometimes for those students who are not, who are unpaid during their internships. Sometimes we do find they are less motivated, so to speak. Yeah, so this is what we tell our partners, but although we truly treasure, I think internship with all the employers, giving our students innumerable experiences out of the world for them, to choose their career path is amazing. But of course, the pressure of that workplace and all that goes to how the career development also works on, and they come and relate to us as internship coordinators. And we ourselves have sessions with the employers as well to what are the problems, and then we also talk to our students and we listen to them. It is both ways, and then we look into, I actually highlight to my students, this is the problem. Some students also have their opinion. We also listen to both sides, and we also listen to the students' perspective as to how they are trying. Some are good in working in teams, some are very good as a solo worker, graphic design, everything solo, wonderful, billboards everywhere, yeah, from the communications guide. But some, they find that working in teams, but this is also the problem of virtual work experience. Yeah, because they don't know you personally, they don't know their supervisors personally, and the supervisors are not available when they want to see them, because supervisors have their own deadlines to meet. So these are the stress that the students experience, and they feel they have been they were misunderstood, but they want to do their best, so this is some of the things. And of course, in a tougher situation, there are students, there's one experience of a very high achieving student who had a breakdown, anxiety, a high level of anxiety, and had to seek, counseling support. Yeah, so we provide support, like, even the employees say, okay, you take a break and you come back, we intervene in that situation, because sometimes things happen. We can have everything in place. In fact, I personally feel universities have done a lot. Yeah, they have done a lot for well-being of students. I think we cannot deny that. They put everything in place, but there are always things that are out of our imagination, things that we cannot imagine it will happen. Sometimes family problems, death, grieving, we cannot measure it or put it into a box and say, look, I give you 2 weeks and you can come out of it. There's no time limit to such experiences, and you don't know how it attacks you. Sometimes it can be a yo-yo experience. So we have to deal as it comes as well, and we cannot put everything in a box and say this is how it's going to work. There is always a first time for us as well, no matter how many times I've dealt with students.
But if I may, I think what I'm getting from you is sort of a general recommendation that we can, of course, we need to be ambitious and try and improve, but there's an element of unpredictability. So our management may only go so far, and then we have to have, let's say, kind of flexibility in dealing with sort of situations that are different. I have two more things. Thanks again also. And one is something that struck me when we were attending the student panel, was about building in periods of rest. And I also find, I mean, compared to other places I've worked, that generally in Malaysia, there is a sort of a tendency to try and push through the whole thing in the shortest period of time, in that I call it fast education as opposed to slow education. So I'm thinking maybe the pandemic would be, there are voices that say we need to have a 3-day weekend. I mean, not just students, right? Everyone. We could all benefit from, we talk about, mental health issues across the board, more time for self, family, resilience building, and so on. So do you think we are, thanks, for the time here. Do you think we are, what do you think of that idea of, and also perhaps related to what I think is a stress factor for students is over-assessment. Generally, it's a word I've been hearing for the last 5 years here in Malaysia. We are over-assessing our students, so they're constantly kept on their toes. And that's compared to a system where students go to class and they live their student lives, and then there may be at the end of the semester or halfway, there is one midterm and there is one final sit-down exam with 5 questions. So now we have turned education, I mean, I'm just observing this, into a constant assessment. So anyway, any thoughts on this? I mean, do you like the idea? Is this even feasible? Is this something that can be pursued, again, from a university point of view? I mean, maybe, Chuan, I suggest to you, Mr. Chuan, maybe you would like to answer that question, or?
Thank you, sir. In terms of semester breaks, right, and also recesses between academic semesters, I think that is one hope that lecturers and educators want to see too. But the problem was this: when we structure a program, and when we look at the course, the program structure with all the relevant courses that needs to be delivered to our potential students and current students, sometimes I look at it and it's not that easy to put in certain recess time. Number two, I do understand that during the pandemic crisis, there are many employees, whether they're educators or from other various field of work, they've actually resigned and changed work because they find that certain organizations, because of the pandemic, that they have actually gone online. And when they come back, right, in the midst of the pandemic, when the situation was much safer, they kind of like changed the work week into 4 days. So many employees actually change work because they opt for companies that allow for 3 days of recess or a 3-day weekend. That's one point, but I'm not sure whether in Malaysia we're ready to move onwards to that. Number two, right, when we look at the assignments, the abundance of assignments, problem is this: we also have received feedback, especially from foreign universities, our foreign academic partners, those who collaborated with us in terms of certain programs. Previously, before we became a university college, when we had advanced diploma, and when we became a university college, we offered degree. But foreign universities, right, they do make that comment that, are you giving an overabundance of assignments to your students? There's too much assessments, that they might not be learning anything because they're rushing their coursework. So that one also comes with a problem, you see, because we do have course learning outcomes in each syllabus. And we might need to fulfill them, because when we get accredited, we might be questioned in terms of how come you have quite a few course learning outcomes, but they are not properly assessed. So I think we can actually move towards a more coursework based rather than exam based assessments, because from my experience over at TORUC for the past 24 years, students don't mind, right, that you have an abundance of coursework. They mind because they are burdened by the final exam, because the final exam, kind of like, if the percentage is quite high, right, it actually might spoil your CGPA. So these are my perspective
Thanks.
in terms of that question.
I'm keeping an eye on the clock. I'm sorry to butt in. I mean, any thoughts, quick ones on that issue? If not, Nur Iman, do you think it's a feasible idea? Would you welcome it, that there is more rest?
Yes, I would. Yes, I would.
I mean, sorry, Nur Iman.
Yes,
yeah.
sorry. Thank
That's
you.
all right.
I think there are, in truth, from both sides about the lecturer's requirement in fulfilling MQA, but we also cannot deny that students might be pressured or restless in fulfilling the coursework assignments. If you can relate, in 2021, there is a case about a student who we lost a student due to pressures in their academic studies. So probably what the best that I could give my opinion, humble opinion, in this is probably to conduct a further research relationship between coursework loads and its impact on students' well-being, so that maybe through that finding we can develop some sort of measurement on how much workload is safe or harmful to the students' well-being.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yes, that's it.
It's a very good point. I think the last question before I round off would be about recommendations. And I think when we formulate recommendations to or give advice to maybe students, to policymakers, to even all the way up to the Ministry of Higher Education, if we formulate advice and recommendations, usually somewhere hidden in it is a sort of shortcoming or a limitation. So we can do those two at the same time. But let's focus on what we would like to see happen in future. And maybe Jyoti, would you like to start off with this?
I think one of the things that I would recommend to students actually is like do engage with the counselors in the university, not just when something happens. You can always track your progress and so on, and that could give you impetus to actually have foresight to things that are coming along the way. And also all the mentor-mentee session, explore it, and then of course they also have to keep themselves active. I think the pandemic has made them less outdoor person, but I think explore those as well for your mental well-being. I think it's very good to go jungle trekking and all that, explore that side of you, bring back the extracurricular activities, for the transition, especially to a full face-to-face classroom as well. Now we are, as we said that, as Mr. Chuan said, we are the frontliner academics. Also, I would also recommend that, we need to review the workloads of academics as well. Yeah, probably there's one of those things that we hear is, maybe we have many things, especially when it comes to ranking, so many things all over, things have changed. I think we cannot overlook this. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chuan, and then I'll give the final word to Nur Iman. So about recommendations, advice, and you can look at all the stakeholders here. You can go all the way up to the ministry, then you can go down to university management, or perhaps, the platforms in which all the unis work together too.
I think we have to shift our own mindset, you see, because I do understand that as educators, there are educators here, there are students here. As educators, right, I do understand that we need to be stringent. University or colleges is a stepping stone into the world of work. So if we're not stringent in terms of assessments and teachings, right, we might not be preparing our young people to embrace the more serious world of work that is out there. And when I talk about changing mindsets, right, I'm also talking about if educators, right, can be friendlier, because when we look at universities or colleges, as I mentioned just now, it's a community. It's a community. Many students, they treat us as a second home. If we could change our mindset in terms of balancing between stringent educating and also a friendlier person inside the community, I think we open up more opportunity, whether it's online or face-to-face, to our young people to actually approach it and perhaps to lighten their burdens. Thank you so much.
Very good point too. Yeah, I think that's definitely a take-home one. And then Nur Iman, before I close our session. So recommendation-wise, advice-wise, I think in the previous panel, the moderator talked about a wish list. So what's on our list here? Yeah.
I still keep on urging this, promoting on it's important for students to be aware and understand about the importance about taking care about their mental health or well-being. And lastly, it's just to say that it's okay to be not okay, but it's not okay to stay that way.
Yeah, I remember seeing that. No, thanks so much. I think I ran over time a little bit. What I would like to say in conclusion is that, of course, it's all been recorded. I think people can get in touch with us through emails and, of course, with PenDaPaT itself. But in preparation of today's session, I had a quick look at what's been published, and we are in the university panel after all. So almost every 2 days, an empirical study is produced in Malaysia about Malaysian higher education and student well-being. So there's a lot of research going on. It really shows that within our academic community, we take this very seriously. It's about best practices, facts and figures, and recommendations. Of course, for that, all of that to trickle down into the kind of cohesive story about what to do and what not to do, what works and doesn't. Will require some work. And I think what Nur Iman also said, we need to also pick things up and do correlational, perhaps causal research to see where we can actually make most significant differences in looking after our students' well-being. That's all from me. I thank you very much for listening, and I would like to hand back to Jimmy. Thanks a lot.
Yep, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Antun. So thank you once again to our academic panel and Dr. Antun for moderating it. Next, we'll move on to our final agenda to actually hear the response from our expert panel. So this session will be moderated by Professor Sukran. Sukran Abdul Rahman is a professor at Department of Psychology, Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman, Kuliah of Islamic Review, Knowledge and Human Sciences, International Islamic University, Malaysia, IIUM. He holds Doctor of Occupational Psychology degree from Murdoch University, Australia. His research area include career development, organization development, organizational behavior, academic culture, changes and development in higher education, employability and graduateness of students in higher learning institution. Sukran had served as Deputy Dean of Admission and Record Division, Director of Alumni and Career Services Division, Deputy Dean in the Office of Corporate Strategy and Quality Assurance, and Director of Center of Professional Development. Currently, he is the Dean of the Kuliah of Islamic Review, Knowledge and Human Sciences. He was a visiting academic in the Department of Educational Psychology at Taiba University, Al-Madinah, Al-Munawwarah, Saudi Arabia in 2008, and visiting academic IPPTN, USM 2017. He is also President-elect of the Malaysian Psychology Association, the Coordinator for Graduateness Research Unit, IIUM, and Associate Research Fellow at the National Higher Education Research Institute, IPPTN. Besides, he is also a team member of Signature Leadership Program for ASEAN Higher Education Institution, which is a project by Higher Education Leadership Academy, ACAP, and CMIO Rehab. I will pass the stage to you, Prof. Sukran.
Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now in the third session of the PenDaPaT Discourse series, right? So the title or the scope of our discussion in this session will be the same. Student well-being, are we doing it right? And after listening to the two set of panelists, the student panel and also the university panel, we have learned a lot. And I think the pronoun we that we're using today is not only referring to the students or academics or lecturers, but also other professionals in the university as well. To mention a few, we have heard of pegawai psychology or psychology officers, right? Administrators, so on and so forth. So we are now having experts panel with us, expert panelists, who are going to, I think, appraise or give their view on what we have heard from the students as well, from the professional just now. So with us in the session are Professor Dr. Siti Raudah Ghazali, who is a professor in UNIMAS. A bit of her background, Professor Siti obtained her PhD in clinical psychology from Ohio, United States, Masters of Science in Clinical Psychology from Michigan, United States, and a bachelor's degree in psychology from Malaysia, from International Islamic University. She is a professor of clinical psychology at University of Malaysia, Sarawak, where she served as the senior director of the Student Development Center since the year 2015. She is a practicing clinician with 20 years of experience, including more than 10 years providing EAP or employee assistance programs in the oil and gas industry. As an academic in the Faculty of Medicine and Health Sciences, Professor Siti carries out an active research agenda focusing on trauma and the development of clinically valid psychological instruments for the Malaysian population. So as an expert, we wish to hear from Professor Siti on how she views student development as person as well as future professionals during the scenario of pandemic. Okay, after this. Our second panelist is Dr. Rosalini. Dr. Rosalini M. Fernandez Chung is an associate professor in the School of Education at the University of Nottingham, Malaysia. She's also the executive director of Center of Academic Partnership and Engagement, or CAPE, at the same university. Before joining University of Nottingham, Malaysia, she was the vice president for quality assurance at Help University and the director for standards and reference at the Malaysian Qualification Agency. She developed the Malaysian and Bangladesh quality assurance systems, including the policies, regulations, standards, and strategies. Dr. Rosalini had contributed to policy and quality assurance development nationally and internationally, and is a World Bank consultant as well. Dr. Ross has led more than 150 international audits and consultancies in policy development, quality assurance, and transnational education. And her role today is very important because I believe she would utilize all the information gathered, okay, to inform policies that pertain well-being of students and maybe well-being of higher education professionals as well. All right, so I will start the discussion today by putting to you, Professor Siti, a question after we have listened to the students, right? So they have mentioned changes and challenges that they have encountered in the context of COVID-19 pandemic. And the issue or the themes of issue highlighted by our students this morning were on their social life, their personal life, their academic life, their teaching and learning experience, right? So how do you see these changes and challenges that they face in the context of their self-development and also professional development? Professor Siti.
Yep. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good afternoon. After listening for 2 hours, I'm pretty much like saturated. Okay, I was noting down some notes, and I'm trying to respond certain thing related to that what we discussed yesterday. And I would like to thank PenDaPaT for inviting me today, and also for the students panel. You know, when I listened to them, mashallah, I think that I was brought back to the session, you know, like Iman said, as if like I was in the middle of the session and I'm listening to the student what's going on, the challenge they have gone through, yeah, in terms of their development and things like that. Also, when I listened to the our university representative, mashallah, Mr. Chuan, Jyoti, and Iman, they highlighted it all in terms of their perspective, student development, and their well-being. You know, I think I just want to go back a little bit you know, to the situation in which we discuss about what is well-being. Now, when we talk about well-being, sometimes students, stakeholders, lecturers, support staff, or university community in general, they always focus on the things that are related to mental health. But essentially, when we talk about well-being, when we talk about student development, I was a dean for student development for so long, about 13 years. So one of the things, I think Iman mentioned this, you know, essentially we are talking about student evaluation. We want to see things that related to student activities. You know, this is well-being. You know, I think it's important that the community out there, the community, campus community, understand that well-being is the definition of well-being is a lot more than mental health. We talk about financial aspects, whether our students have enough financial aspect. You know, program we used to have food banks, we have a scholarship, we have wakaf, you know, and that's number one. And number two, we talk about students' activities. Someone mentioned, Iman or maybe Jyoti just now mentioned about employment, how graduate employability, every time the university represent the university and the students, you know, and then want to talk about employability, and our employer always complain or give some kind of comments about student soft skills and things like that. This is normally at university level, we covered under students' activities, sharpening soft skills, volunteerism, training in leadership skills and things like that, networking to alumni. Those are the second thing. The third thing is physical health. We talk about health services, you know, the university have those things, and intervention, psychoeducation, healthy lifestyles, we do have that as well. And the fourth is mental health. Whether we realize it or not, Prof. Shukran and friends, during pandemic, we missed the first three, you know, in terms of directly providing services to our students, financial. Yes, we do help, you know. I'm happy to hear that, you know, our students recognize and aware that those things are available. Students' activities, basically, when I look at who is that just now, Ishraf, Haziq, you know, Nabil did talk about how universities struggle so much to do student activities online, you know. Those are the kind of things we do not have it directly. And of course, mental health situation, I think the university have provided the best, but the question is, have we reached enough? Looking at the way the student responds just now, I recognize that students know what's going on. They have emotionally and mentally, they are very aware on what's going on. There's advantages of online learning, disadvantages of online learning. They all know that, which is great to me. But whether we realize it or not, we do not hear the voice of those who already suffer. You know, the students. That's one of the components that I think we really do not explore in this discussion. It's sort of overwhelming in terms of listening to all those things. You know, I would prefer for our portion of discussion to be shortened, and we listen to what are other things that people want to hear from us. You know, essentially, Iman, Mr. Chuan, Jyoti, and the students have covered it all. You know, so that's basically my reaction, my comment on this for the first two sessions. Prof.
Thank you, Professor Siti. And now I'm going to Ross. Ross, I think what Professor Siti said just now is relatable to what we have heard from the two sets of panelists. I think from the students' side, we have heard of their readiness. Okay, we have heard of how do they make use of the university intervention. We have also listened to how they form solidarity among them. All right, so to help each other in dealing with or in coping with challenges and challenges and changes. But I assume that this is their effort. This is student driven as opposed to university-wide intervention. Like for Professor Siti, you said, maybe, I mean, there are people who have not voiced out their other sufferings, right? So Rosa, what say you on this note?
Yeah, thank you, Shukran. Hi, Siti. Hi, everyone. Well, I think Siti raised a good point, and as you so did, Shukran, while we all agree COVID-19 kind of hit us suddenly, but I think the reality for mental health is that we were not ready. We didn't have the necessary infrastructure prior to any kind of pandemic. Of course, the pandemic is a good time for us to learn, and I think we're going to come out of it stronger. I have no doubt about it. And discourse like this will help us come out stronger. But I think naturally the students managed the best they can. And from the academic panel, we learned that universities and academics too did the best they can in that environment. But the lack of this clear, focused, strategic policies, particularly for higher education, kind of did not give us the necessary scaffolding or the structure needed for us to better support students. And I think moving forward, perhaps we would be able to come up with better ideas and better structure, and perhaps inform the policymakers to develop these with specific attention to higher education sector, which I don't think at the moment we have much in the field. Yeah. So I will let Siti talk more though, because this is more her area, but I'll come into policy.
Yeah, I would like to tap on Professor Siti's experience, having served UNIMAS as Dean of Student Development. Do you think that services like counseling and any other assistance program available in universities are standard? Do we have same standard of student assistance program, if you like?
Right. I'm a representative of a Dean Council as well, at least what I used to be. Now I'm back to faculty. I'm no longer holding any position as administrator. I'm also a representative of lecturers, what the lecturers going through, the struggle they've gone through. I'm also a representative of parents. I have 4 children in the university. 1 just graduated, and I witnessed their struggle and things like that. Back to the question, do we have enough facilities? Are there structure? Essentially, in the university, there are structure. For example, almost every university, we do have a counseling center. In UNIMAS, UMS, they mentioned about 10 counselors serving about 10,000 students. But UNIMAS only have five counselors, including me will be 6 providers. And yes, we do set up. We do have the setup is there. What are other things that we've been doing in the Majlis Counselor Kebangsaan, the National Counselor Councils, and we set up things related to SOP when it comes to emergency, mental health emergency like suicide. What needs to be done by lecturers? What needs to be done by the university system? Attempted suicide, hysteria, for example. The SOP is there. We initiated it and we already presented it to the council. And I strongly believe that university has that. Now, Mr. Chuan, and also Iman brought very important issue. Lack of, we need more counselors. This, I can see that it's not enough. Now the cases arising, if you look at almost every single mental disorder, especially the major one like anxiety, trauma, grief, social anxiety, depression, suicide problems, across the board, significantly increased. We are looking at 30% to 40% from the data that the numbers increasing, have increased significantly. So the structure is there. We don't want to even deny the fact is that the structure is there, but it's always not enough, And one thing that we always forget, we do have services for the students, but in UNIMAS, for example, we only have one counselor for the lecturers and staff. And one component of this thing, a lot of people do not forget, about the fact is that lecturers are also stressful. Lecturers are also need help, and lecturers also need training in terms of how to handle the student when the students say that they have suicide ideation. This is a struggle. I think Jyoti mentioned about this too. The training is there. So we basically, whether we realize it or not, during pandemic, we never thought that mental health training, the basic mental health training, is essential. Never at all. But now, as we respond to the need, we do have to think that direction. We have the structure, we have the counselors, we have the students, services, but now one more that we need, other than adding more counselors, we do need lecturers to be trained as well. I'm not sure about the private university. I think almost every single university awam, the public university, it is actually requirement to have student counseling center, in which I think it should be enforced. I think that's my response, Prof.
Yeah. Okay.
The structure is there.
Yes. So structurally, all universities, and I think private universities as well, are ready. They are ready to enter into any crisis situation like pandemic. But logistically, many more have to be done, right? So going back to the question of our PenDaPaT discourse series on whether we are doing it right, Ross. Okay, what do you think would be the measure, to determine whether we have been doing this or we are doing this right, other than looking at the structure?
All right. Thank you, Shukran. I must say, just to clarify a little bit on what I said earlier, when we talk about structure, I think Siti is right. The university put some structures in place. And in fact, if you look at COPA, for example, MQA document, we do have the requirement for counselors to be put in, and that was created sometime in 2007, So we kind of have about 13 years way to actually have some form of structure. And I think with all our Setara and MyQuest audits, public and private institutions have put in or have put in structures internally to support these needs of students. But how effective are they is something that has not been measured per se, because whether we like it or not, at the moment, the policymakers' approach to mental health of students in higher education is just about, do you have a counseling unit? How many counselors do you have? It is still very tick the box kind of approach. I think we need a larger kind of bigger umbrella approach to mental health of students, keeping in mind that we are dealing with, I was reading the National Strategic Plan for Mental Health, 2025, 2030, if I'm not mistaken, or is it 2020, 2025? There's not even one mention of Ministry of Higher Education there. So it's all about Ministry of Education, and there's no relevance, or Ministry of Higher Education was not brought into the picture, even though we are dealing with at age gap. I think it was in the same document, they said about 30% of our youngsters above the age of 16 suffer from some form of mental health. And we know this is the largest population that we have in our classrooms, Yet we don't have this umbrella kind of an overarching policy from the government, from the Ministry of Health, for example, and getting the Ministry of Higher Education to ensure that whatever policies that has been in place through MQA, COPA, for example, are in fact efficient. again, as I said, universities are doing the best we can. Now, I give you an example. How many teachers in the university level do get training for psychoeducation training, or training in counseling, or training in recognizing mental health issues in students? We are the forefront people that actually fronts the student every time. We are the ones usually who the students turn to. We heard this from the student panel as well. But how many of us are actually trained to handle or manage or refer these matters to the right body or the right person, you know? So I think while the universities are doing the best we can, and I'm not denying it, we have been doing this for the past 10, 13 years especially, but I think more is required from the higher level authority on mental health in Malaysia.
Yeah, thank you, Ross. Yeah, so like what we had discussed before, you know, to ensure or to enhance the well-being among our students, we need to empower many other parties, especially the lecturers or the higher education professionals, so that, you know, they can radiate, you know, some help or, you know, provide some assistance to their students. So having said that, what emerged during this pandemic time was effort to also assist employees in university, effort to assist academics, assist administrators on how to themselves be, you know, how to themselves having well-being, right? So they have to themselves be, you know, in a state of good mind first. I mean, they have to enjoy well-being first before they can, you know, offer some assistance to students. So Professor Siti, looking at your background, you are very experienced in EAP, Employee Assistance Program, right? So how do we emulate or learn from EAP to maybe design a module of Student Assistance Program, SAP, if you like?
Well, I always say this, you know, we're not talking about mental health. We're not talking about mental disorder. We talk about stress, you know, in organization. We always talk about stress, yeah, tekanan. And there are things that we do to help at an individual level. What does it mean when the workers or students have issues related to divorce? Someone mentioned about it just now. Some of our students went back home and they just discovered that their parents are actually not in a good term. They just realized that, oh my God, actually my mom and my dad in the verge of getting divorced. This is individual level. So we deal with that, you know, we help them at that particular level. There are another level, at a group level, department level, things related to group assignment. For example, my son asked permission last year to go back to UTM because he said he cannot deal with his friend anymore because his friend liked to do assignment at 2 a.m. in the morning for group discussion, because that's the only time the other friend can start using internet, because otherwise the internet, no internet, essentially. That's what we call group, you know. And the other level is at the organizational level. Now, at the organizational level is, what is your attitude about mental health? How do you deal when the students say that they do not have modem, they cannot study at the university, they have problems understanding, you know, I'm teaching medical students. It is really difficult for the student to understand clinical skills online, period. As simple as that. So those are the kind of things that we do have to address at the organizational level. For certain universities, they do not have medical students. They don't need to bring the students come back to the campus. However, for us, you know, we do need to do that. For example, studio for architecture students, you know, there is no way you can do studio without giving feedback to the students directly, you know, the creativity, the sharpness of colors and things like that. That is at the organizational level. I'm interested, one thing that we always neglect completely ignore when we address certain issue at policy level. That is Rosie's job. I have 7 children, 4 in the university, 3 in the school system. I must say that certain ministry handle the way we do things at the university level is a lot more smoother, a lot more easier. But there are things at different ministry, things related to the education, for example, how we manage the online learning and that kind of stuff, and a lot of school teachers have very stressful and requirement from certain agency to submit report and to do some kind of survey, the effectiveness of online learning, attendance and things like that. It's very pressuring, it's very stressful, the school teachers. Now, you have to remember one thing when we talk about stress at the national level, when we talk about pressure, tekanan, at bigger perspective, when the school teacher feels stressed, it will affect the customer, the student. It's the same thing also in the in higher education level. So this is the kind of thing that we need to use the policy. In UNIMAS, for example, we encourage the lecturer to be more flexible, open book examination, maybe reducing the final exam into 10% and things like that. That has to be done at the organizational level or on a policy level. They have to, as requirement from MQA, this is online version of our curriculum. Is it acceptable or not? We send a thick document to the MQA and saying that this is the online version. So that's the thing, sometimes when I look at the employer assistance program, I always look at this 4 levels. Is this your individual? Is this your department? Is this organizational, or is this policy? So the way we have to deal with it has to be looking at the 4 dimensions, Prof. I think.
Thank you, Professor Siti. So you mentioned organizational level, maybe at policy level, organization has to do something about, changing some policy that can help ensure, the presence of well-being among, I think, students, academics, so on and so forth, so that, although we can tweak here and there, the quality is still there, right? Yeah. So we do not want to remove this unit, that unit. We do not want to be so flexible with examination without coming up with alternate assessment that can compensate whatever we have removed, right? So Rose, I think being a policy person, I think very much we have to also relate our discussion with the falsafah pendidikan kebangsaan or national education philosophy. And I think the national education philosophy has put well-being as the ultimate aim of citizenship development, right? But I think well-being must also be present in the process to educate. And if we study the national education philosophy thoroughly, nowhere in the statement that mention school or university, right, Professor Siti? Right? So I think it talks about the need to provide orchestrated education process or holistic education process. And it didn't mention Ministry of Education or Ministry of Higher Education for that matter. And I think in a crisis time like this, all ministries, all agencies have to really go back to the national education philosophy and assume their roles. Right, I think when we started our pandemic, we started our MCO last time, I think Ministry of Health has been playing their role. I think Ministry of Science Technology has been playing their role as well. Communication, I think all agencies have to see where they should be playing their role to make sure that education is a continuous process, right? So I think the philosophy is there, the statement is there, but how do we make sure that all agencies aware of their role, okay, especially when we have to make sure that education process continue, okay, in the time of crisis. Rose.
Thank you, Shukran. I absolutely agree with you. And I think that's where the challenge is at the moment, you see. We spoke, and you're rightly so, you know, well-being is a big concern, or the final target of education philosophy. I agree, our national education philosophy. But we have put a target without building the road, you see. So we don't know how to get to that target. And this pandemic is an awakening call for us, because we are now beginning this discourse. To start off, I think what's important is to embed these ministries in the conversation. So when you talk about well-being, don't forget Ministry of Higher Education, don't forget Ministry of Education, bring them all together. You know, when you talk about the mental health well-being, why do we take out the Ministry of Higher Education? They must be part of that and core of it, you see. Similarly, I think I want to touch a little bit on these policies that are made during the COVID-19. Again, I'm not faulting the ministries for coming up with a policy. I think Ministry of Education was very fast. In fact, I always say Ministry of Education was fast and furious during the COVID-19, because they were coming up with multiple policies on, yes, online, hybrid, whether you can go to university, you cannot go to university, you know, a lot of support. How is food given to students at this time? A lot of things were coming in place, and I think they're doing really well. But one of the questions that I have to ask, I don't know the answer, but I have to ask, when the ministry came up with this policy to conduct training online, let's say teaching online, were they guided by mental health practitioners or professionals? Were they guided? I mean, like, did they engage mental health professionals to actually come up with this policy so that students can be supported in a more appropriate and meaningful way? You know, so the policy is good. Yes, we have to do it online because teaching will have to continue. But the question is, we should have supported that policy with a policy on mental health. What kind of scaffolding or structure should we have put in place in order to ensure this online goes well with this mental health support that we're giving students? I think that's what I'm trying to talk about. When we talk about policy, one is to incorporate people into that conversation. If you achieve the overarching aim of the national education philosophy. But second one, I think it's important, is to continuously engaging professionals who are good in their job. And we have a lot of them, like Prof. CT and all, you know, they could have been engaged into that conversation. If I'm going to say, do your classes online, universities and colleges that has very good counseling systems, like examples given by Prof. CT, the students probably had a little bit more support. But in institutions that lack those infrastructure, the students will not be getting the support that we want. And therefore you will have this different level of support given to student mental health, yeah? So I think having that necessary scaffolding or structure from the very beginning for policymakers, engaging mental health professionals, you know, designing what we call what I would like to call mental health management system, you know, perhaps is really important so that we can actually support the student. And I think, I can't remember, I think it was Shukran or Siti who said it, you know, like, if teachers are happy, students are happy. I agree. I think happy teachers make happy students, you know. So I think these things are necessary for us if we want to move forward or take this conversation forward and ensure that our students actually benefit from good mental health. Yeah.
So I think very good that you mentioned this mental health management system, in addition to mental health intervention programs. So I think this mental health management system should be in place so that we can have a subtle, effective, efficient mental health intervention and prevention programs. Right. So now, what voice do we have, Professor Siti? So how do we communicate this idea to, you know, policymakers or the authorities, so that we can really put this mental health management system in place so that we can really facilitate our community in the university to promote well-being. We can really support our students to attain well-being, and we can really provide scaffolder to both students and academics as well as the whole community, so that they can work on and eventually attain well-being, like Ross said just now, scaffolder. I think that is very important. So Professor Siti, how do we move forward from here?
Yeah, we do have a counselor, we call it Makuma, Majlis Counseling University Awam, in which we've been we implement the SOP for mental health before pandemic. However, this counselor exclude the private university in the loophole, in which I think again we do need some kind of memorandum of agreement or things that we have to send, at the national level to include them along with our friends from the public university. There are few other things that we want to do in such a way that, not only intellectual discourse, not only professional practice, exchange ideas or sharing session. We do need, when we do have that kind of policy, I just give one example. I do notice, Iman can give comment on this, I do notice at not only at the university level, even at the Ministry of Health level, even mental health provider now are affected by the overloaded cases. That's the best example that I can give you. However, people from Ministry of Health, for example, they do have, we call it cuti radiasi, a very special holiday, which is compulsory for you to take every month so you can have proper rest. We do not have that for the university level. If you look at the cases, Iman, Iman can
yes.
Cases at the university is just more or less just like at the psychiatric. We have bipolar, we have obsessive compulsive disorder, we have a schizophrenia, we do have major depression, we have all sort of other things, come into us. This is the kind of thing that we've been dealing, but the mental health situation for our provider are also not taken care of. When Prof Shukran said, where are our direction? That's one of our direction. We can invite our friends in the council, to join us, so our voice can be heard, because of this is a council that report directly to the Ministry Higher Education. So that's one of the venue, of course, at the end of our discussion today. Maybe that's one of the resolution that we should really promote, I think, bringing along our friends from the private to join us to be together in this council. Prof, back to you.
Thank you, Professor Siti. And Rose, so what is your aspiration with regard to your suggestion just now?
Thank you, Shukran. There's certainly strength in power. Strength in numbers, or power in numbers, Siti. And I think that's really a good outcome, in the sense that it is good to engage the government, not only to say what we want to say or what we want to propose, but also to indicate that we are here to help if you need support. We are here to advise. We are here to guide in that sense, because I think nobody knows higher education better than those of us who are within the higher education sector. And nobody knows mental health and higher education better than mental health practitioners in higher education. So I think it is crucial that policymakers, particularly at the Ministry of Higher Education, engage people from this Majlis Counseling University, which we hope will no longer take the University Awam name, but change it to Majlis Counseling University, perhaps in future. Maybe that can come out of this discourse. I'd be very happy if that's an outcome. Yeah. So that Ministry of Higher Education will engage this Majlis before policies are put out. As I said, there's nothing wrong with online learning policy. And I think online learning policy is the future for higher education. But how do we then support students during this? And it's situations like pandemic that we have, or forget about pandemic. What happens if there's flooding? And students cannot come out of their homes. They have to be at home and take their classes. Then How do we support them during this time? So I think this kind of ideas are really good. So perhaps this Majlis counseling can start the ball rolling to tell them to give them some proposals, and also to tell the ministry that we are here to help. We are here to be engaged. So please engage us when you're making some policies for higher education. Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. And thank you, Ross, for saying that. And I think it goes back to our real functions of university. I think as university, we serve as the agent of change, agent of development, agent of improvement of the society through our intellectual work, through our social development work, and through our educational work. Right? I think the social functions of ours require us to make sure that people, individuals that we produce, okay, have good level well-being, and they also can enable others to attain well-being in their life. I think that is our responsibility, being a university, okay, being universities in Malaysia. I think I would like to relate whatever we have discussed in this discourse with two previous webinars that I moderated. So before this, I have moderated a webinar on mental health with UNDP and Persatuan Psikologi Malaysia, or Malaysian Psychological Association. So that was what we call that breaking the silence moment, okay, breaking the silence webinar, where the government, the ministries of education, higher education, and Ministry of Health have spoken about the essentiality of mental health, okay, as a national agenda, right? So mental health is now regarded as an important national agenda. It is part of our security agenda as well, right? So after that, we had another webinar with ECAP. So in the webinar, we talk about the importance of university leaders to acknowledge, okay, and do many things about mental health and well-being, right? So the webinar talked about the need to train university leaders, vice chancellor, deputy vice chancellor, dean, directors, to recognize the need to attend to mental health issues, well-being and whatnot among students and staff, right? And in this discourse, in this webinar, I think we emphasize, we reiterate, we underscore the need to provide mental health services, the need to enhance effort to enhance or develop well-being among our students and our academics as well as administrators. And you mentioned about the importance of policy as well. So policy has to be strengthened. If it is not yet in place, if it is in place, then we can do something to improve it so that we can see what can be strengthened, what can be improved, and so on and so forth. I hope PenDaPaT can take up this suggestion. Maybe we can call National Security Council, MKN, who's very open to outreach other agencies, including higher education institutions. KKM, Ministry of Health, has a special unit on mental health. Okay, they are always in touch with universities as well, so we can call them to our discussion table. Maybe Professor Zaini, if we could empower Ross to take up this, it will be very grateful. Okay. And we look forward to join force with you, right? And I believe the city is all for this means.
Yeah.
Right. So, Jimmy, I think we are done with this session. Thank you very much, Professor Siti, Ross, and our appreciation goes to PenDaPaT for having this discourse. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shukran. Thank you, Siti.
Thank you. Thank you, Prof. Shukran. Thank you to all expert panel and also Professor Shukran for moderating the session. So we are now reaching at the end of the webinar today. So before we end, we'd like to have closing remarks. So now I would like to invite Professor Zaini, the chairperson of PenDaPaT, for closing remarks. So over to you, Prof. Zaini.
Thank you, Jimmy. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you well.
All right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, friends, and members of PenDaPaT.
Assalamualaikum and selamat berpuasa to all our Muslim friends. It's been a long session, so I believe in the last 2 hours or so, we have learned a lot from the sessions delivered by very interactive panels, i.e. the students, representatives, scholars and practitioners. They have all shared very interesting perspectives, a little on findings and work on the topic of students' well-being, and a lot on approaches to embed well-being among the students. The content, as highlighted by some panels, should be more whole community approaches to mental, emotional, social, physical, and academic health, and supporting the overall well-being among diverse student bodies. I think, as we all know, ultimately the role of higher education institutions is to build healthy, positive, and resilient students. So the seminar was aimed to take basically a first glance at students' well-being, and the scene was set up by Mr. Guy based on his large scale of students' experience project on students' happiness or satisfaction. Thank you, Guy, for your insight and loyalty to PenDaPaT, ever willing to share even at the last minute. And I was also really looking forward to hear about how some universities are trialing new methods or resources or unit to support well-being within their students. We heard some examples, while what I can gather at the end was that while support services such as counselor units play a vital role in assisting students, but decisions about course design, approach to teaching, the academic aspects of learning can also have a major impact on student well-being. The panels also talk about modest intervention that takes very little effort to implement, i.e. appropriate assignment, flexible exam structures, yet these can have a large impact on the overall of students' well-being. I love how some of these strategies were shared, which can be used immediately. People always ask, what do we do with the things shared during a seminar or a conference? Is it shop sendiri? Or can it change policies or the minds of policymakers? I don't have an accurate answer to that or a good answer for you. But we, meaning participants, I've been listening from for the whole session, can certainly take stock of what we have discussed here and apply that straight away to our day-to-day work. And of course, as suggested by Prof. Shukran, to actually take it further through forum and discussion with the appropriate policymakers. Obviously, much work is needed to identify what constitutes good practice in embedding well-being in higher education, especially when Malaysia, it seems, has successfully supported student well-being better than others. And personally, I think if we want to be a leader in this area of specialization, this area of students' well-being and counseling, I hope that experts and practitioners in the area can really consider to move forward by providing, indigenous knowledge that has not been developed before, contextual knowledge, religious knowledge, cultural-based knowledge, then that can be shared with others and show perhaps that's how Malaysia was successful in dealing with a lot of students' issues. I hope for the students, this experience has given you some knowledge, more importantly, the right attitude to support you yourself and your peers' well-being, and for you to take ownership in promoting well-being within your student group and the university student community. On behalf of PenDaPaT, we thank you, the students panel, Ifah, Ishraf, Hazif, Muhammad Nabil. I would also like to thank the practitioners, Ms. Nurul Iman, Mr. Chuan, Mr. Kalai, Jyoti, and our expert panels, Prof. Siti and Prof. Dr. Ross, as well as the enthusiastic moderators, Dr. Zulfika and Dr. Antun and Prof. Shukran. Thank you for willing to share your experience and your thought with us today. Finally, my greatest or heartfelt thanks and congratulations to the committee for this PenDaPaT Discourse Series 1 2022, spearheaded by Dr. Jimmy and supported by Dr. Ross, Dr. Intan, and Dr. Mazura. They were really, really excited to have this seminar on this topic as part of improving the well-being of students. PenDaPaT members are forever and extremely grateful to all your hard work in making the seminar a reality. So thank you again. Over to you, Jimmy.
Thank you, Prof. Saini. So our session has now reached to an end. So before we end the session, so can we just can I just request everyone to on your camera so that we can actually take a group photo before we end the session.